Okay, I'm gonna try and do this as fast as possible because I have work in the morning, but I want to keep playing because obviously I want to try and finish this game as quickly as possible so that I can do the entire, basically like retrospective of the whole series. So, uh, if I remember correctly, this is chapter 5 now, and I think like 3 people have died so far. I think it was Barst, who's like an axe fire, which we already had 2 other of those, so that doesn't really matter. Other than that though, like, um, I don't even remember the other 2. They probably weren't that important. So, whatever. I'm not gonna take drug, cause I hate using armored knights, and Reese kinda sucks, other than the staff, and I don't really need Gordon considering I have Caster. So, I don't know what that is. But his men though. Actually, I'll take him over Lena. Men and heal are a lot better than Morb. Princess Nina, the Altean army has appeared on the opposite side of the river. Oh, Hardin, have they really? So Prince Marth has come. Finally, we can build a force to fight back. Princess, it is dangerous here. Please wait for the prince inside the fortress. Together with Altea, we will retake the castle. Okay, so which one is Hardin? That's Violent. Ugly portrait. One of these is Hardin, who I don't actually know what good he is in this game, but for someone who you don't really feel like will be that important, he is very important to this story. If not for this game, at least in FE3 Book 2, he becomes like a super important character, which I would personally say is a bit weird, but it actually makes a bit more sense once you actually figure out what the story going on is. As for the rest of this map, up here is Wendell, which is going to be a very good unit to get, mainly because of the fact that he, as far as I know, is I guess the first mage unit. If I didn't miss anyone, that is, which I easily could have, especially considering in that last chapter, Village obviously got destroyed, so if anyone was in there, that wouldn't be good. But considering the fact that most characters, especially in the early Fire Emblem games, have basically abysmal resistance stats, mages can be very, very useful. It obviously still depends on their overall utility. Like, if they have not very good speed or not very good attack, then it's going to be a different story. But a lot of times, even the worst mages can still be decently used, I feel. Speaking of mages though, just in general, I have to say they're definitely one of my favorite classes to use overall. The utility of having a magic user on you is very, very good, especially because a lot of the time they can replace what some of the other characters are able to do. The big example that comes to mind for me personally is probably archers, mainly because a lot of the time when magic has flying effectiveness, which is basically the big thing for archers. So once you get that for a mage, once you get wind, outwind, Excalibur, whatever, you basically get to do a whole bunch of damage to whatever flying unit you want. And archers really just become even more useless than they already are in a lot of the games. Looking at overall mages as well, like, they get the utility of having 1 to 2 range with basically all of their magic spells, and then some of them, the ones that don't have 1 to 2 range, usually are either a pretty strong 1 range weapon or 1 range tome like Surge, which is decent to have, but obviously you would rather take a lot of other types of tomes instead. And then you have stuff like Meteor, which has 3 to 10 range, which you don't think is going to be very good at first because you obviously can't do that much up close. But the amount of range that it has just gives you so much potential to do other stuff. Looking at these other units over here, we have obviously 3 cavalry units, one of them being Hardin, Violent, and Rocher. I obviously, since I'm very new to this game, especially this part in the game, I don't really know what's going on after the beginning. I don't know how good they are in comparison to a lot of these other units, but I mean, the fact that Hardin is level 6 will be very, very good. And obviously bow units in this game are decent, but the fact that they get horseback automatically makes their utility so much better, because it takes them from decent units that can easily just hit an enemy unit from 2 range to one that can go extreme distances to try and hit other units. So it becomes very, very helpful to have. Movement in most Fire Emblem games is very good. I'd say there's only like a handful of games in Fire Emblem where horses aren't that useful. Definitely the biggest Fire Emblem game for any type of unit on horseback has to be Genealogy of the Holy War. The map design of that game, the maps are so large that if you're not a cavalry or a flying unit, you are getting left behind and you are automatically considered not as good as most of the other units in the game. Even like classes that are usually pretty decent, like there's a character named Ira in that game who you get in the first chapter who you think is a pretty good sword unit. Like, she gets the Swordmaster class, she gets Astra, she's very strong, she's very fast. Her movement though, because she doesn't get a horse or a mount of any kind, she's getting like 6 movement max at her current class, while everyone else is getting 8, 9, possibly even 10, and that adds up a lot. So, looking at this first thing, obviously hit is pretty bad, but most of the time thieves, yeah, they have like very, very bad defenses. That's something I honestly think is really cool about Fire Emblem is a lot of the classes have unique attributes to them, and you can tell a lot from a unit based on what class they tend to have. Like, obviously Armored Knights you can expect to have high defense, Thieves usually have very low strength but extremely high speed and skill. I feel like a lot of the time it's balanced later on though, especially with Thieves, because they go from units who overall you only really want because you need to open like a treasure chest or something like that because that's their special attribute. But once it gets to a point where other characters can start getting door keys and chest keys, master keys, all that, their usefulness decreases a lot. So then it becomes, the thief's job becomes less of trying to open up a bunch of chests and trying to get whatever they can, and it becomes more of a thing of trying to hit critical hits or trying to get specific skills. The big one that comes to mind has to be lethality, which I'd say had most of its usefulness in FE7 for me personally, just because of the fact that unlike a lot of the other games where lethality appears, you don't really get to see what the % chance of proccing it is. And I feel like for me personally, it kind of gives me a placebo effect to make me think that it'll actually hit a lot more of the time than it does. Lethality overall though is an insane ability if you are able to hit it, because it automatically kills an enemy. So let's say Thief is doing like 2 or 3 damage to an enemy. That's probably what they're usually doing to an Armored Knight anyways, just because of their low strength versus the high defense. Skills like lethality might have that very low chance to proc. But if they hit, and that can give you a huge advantage overall in the battlefield. I'd say, though, thieves overall aren't one of my favorite classes to really use, just because of the fact that though I love luck, it's like one of my favorite things of all time is to just get that lucky hit in, and like get the lucky hit in, get the lucky growth for stats. Relying on it all the time stresses me out, and I need a backup plan for a backup plan. So thieves overall just aren't really my thing. Pegasus Knights, on the other hand, are units I really love to use. The high speed and skill that they have is very similar to that of a thief, and the fact that they also have decent attack but not the greatest. It all reminds me of basically a thief that is able to fly. However, they actually usually get a lot better of a strength growth overall, which can make them a lot more useful in the late game. One of my favorite Falcon Knights has to be Florina, who also appears in FE7, just like the way I mentioned lethality, because her ability, what is this movement? Her availability overall is very, very good, as you can get her basically right away in the game. She comes in at like chapter 3 of the 30-something main story chapters in that game, and if you grind her up enough, you can increase that strength stat, and she will become a powerhouse of a unit later on in the game who you absolutely should use. Like, yeah, 1 damage, that's not cutting it, she does. Hopefully, though, she will be able to get some more experience and be able to level that strength, because, yeah, it's only at 3 right now. That's not good. Especially, the good news is, at least, these guys are still, you know, only like a pretty low level. If they were a lot higher of a level, I would be having a lot more trouble, and I really would be wishing that I actually went ahead and went into that arena last chapter, instead of just throwing in Mathis and hoping for the best. Caster actually hit, which is very, very nice. For some reason, he had a hard time with that. Okay, Agma can go up here. Later on in the series, Falcon Knights, they kind of did a weird turn for me where, you know, some of the games, I honestly am not a fan of using them. Fire Emblem Fates, I wasn't a huge fan of either Hinoka or Tsubaki, so I never really ended up using them in my playthrough of that. Oh shoot, I need to give... Marth needs a new weapon. That might be a problem. We'll figure it out. I never really ended up using Hinoka or Tsubaki for Fire Emblem Fates, even though they get the Falcon Knight class. I think it's really because when I first started Fire Emblem Fates, that was actually my first Fire Emblem game, and seeing the fact that they didn't really have good strength growths or strength stats overall, it didn't really go with my playstyle at the time, which was literally be strong and hit stuff. You know, didn't work out very well unless I was able to grind up a lot, which, you know, for Birthright at least, that is very, very easy to do, luckily. So, Birthright overall is a fairly easy game, which I honestly really like. It helped me, obviously, to get into this series, and now I've experienced a lot more of it and found a lot of love in it. But, ooh, that's not good. Going back to it, it's not as fun as it was in my first playthrough, and I think that's just because of the fact that I've had more chances to play other games, so now I know a lot more mechanics that are at play that are in those games against what was really in Fates, which, you know, especially for Birthright. Oh. Uh-oh. That's not good. Birthright overall, it's a great experience. What it marketed is, marketing itself as a beginner-friendly game, I think is very good. Oh. Prince, I am Wendell, a bishop of Kadang. We are a peaceful people, but our pleas were met only with cruelty by Garnath as he seized the city. Thanks to his dark influence, many mages have now allied themselves with Tholar. Please, with the strength of your forces, find a way to put an end to Garnath's ambitions. Well, that was unexpected. Oh, and this dude's dead. Oh, Rocher's alive? Not for long. Oh. Okay. Rocher survives, lives another day. That's pretty nice. I think Birthright marketing itself as a beginner-friendly game was a good idea on paper, but a lot of the mechanics that are found within it really don't go with what the rest of the series is about. Oh, we can't use the silver sword yet. Huh. Like, the fact that, you know, there are so many things in that game that could be really interesting and could add to a player-friendly experience, but they don't really go in that direction, and instead, several of the mechanics make it a bit difficult to say that it's fully a great way to start the series is a little bit annoying, because it becomes this thing of it's recommended for people to start out with, but you really should start out with a different game. I think that's mainly because of the fact that the beginning parts of Birthright and the entirety of Fates overall are very, very short. You only have like 6 chapters, and those chapters are very short before the actual main story picks up and you're out of the tutorial. So comparing that with stuff like Path of Radiance, or especially FE7, FE7 has about an 11 chapter tutorial, which sounds like a lot to go through, but considering the elements that each chapter discusses, I feel like it's warranted in a lot of ways, because it does a great job of telling a complete story while giving a lot of tips to newer players that really help out in the long run. As for Birthright, you go in and you find out a couple of mechanics about what the game has to offer, but you don't really get too much in terms of what you need to do for an overall Fire Emblem experience. So my first time around playing it, it was a bit difficult to get into. I was lucky enough, though, that YouTube exists nowadays, and I could just look up a bunch of stuff and figure out what to do from there. But if someone was going into the game blind and didn't have access to the internet somehow, they're gonna have a lot more problems than me. Along with that, overall, I haven't finished all of the Routes of Fates. I finished Birthright and Revelations, but I haven't finished Conquest. Even so, I feel like Birthright is definitely the weakest route of the 3. A lot of the elements that it has don't really matter to the main story that Fates is trying to tell. Like, the fact is, you don't get much character for anyone you really get to play as, and instead a lot more time is just spent being like, hey, we need to rescue this place. Oh no, the place was destroyed, or oh yay, we saved this place. And that's really good, which does kind of suck overall. You don't really get a lot of experiences that you can in the other 2 routes, which, even saying that, personally, I feel like Fates' story is pretty weak. However, I am begging so much for the Fire Emblem Fates remake. I want it to happen so badly. I know it will probably happen eventually because it seems like Intelligent Systems is doing what the Pokemon Company is doing, which is basically just re-releasing their old games on the newer hardware for people to play. It seems like the current rumor is that that's what they're doing with Genealogy of the Holy War. I'm pretty sure a while ago there was like a huge rumor that the next Fire Emblem game is getting announced soon, and here's a bunch of screenshots of what the early game demos look like of it, and then along with that it talked about a potential Genealogy of the Holy War remake, and a lot of people thought those images possibly could be fake. I think someone online said that like the Japanese text translated to something like lol. And then a few months later, Fire Emblem Engage was revealed, and those leaks turned out to be true, so it could easily just turn out to be that the Genealogy of the Holy War remake is an actual true thing, and that it's actually happening. And if it does, I would honestly not be upset at all, because that game, the story from what I've heard is just so good. So I really can't wait to play it. But in terms of like something like that compared to Fates, it's really a no-brainer going through Fates. The story is very, very awkward. But it's honestly a really interesting story. Oh, that's not good. There was a video that I saw about the overall development of Fire Emblem Fates and the process that the developers went through when making the game. And I don't remember what it's called, but if you're able to find information about it, I would recommend looking into it, because some of the stuff that's in it is very interesting to see, and it explains a lot about how exactly the game was developed and what really occurred behind the scenes. I think one of the most interesting things that came from it was the fact that really the reason that Fates was released the way it was because of the Responsive Awakening. You know, going through it, Awakening was in a lot of people's minds, mine included, one of the games that really helped to save the franchise of Fire Emblem overall. That's really the child that it's gone throughout the years, is the game that saved the franchise. And whether you love the game or you hate the game, it really did help to revitalize the series overall. But then going off of that, it really became a question of what would be next. And apparently the story that I've heard at least goes that no strength increase. The story goes that part of the development team wanted to keep going with what Awakening had started, and keep going with possible romance options, keep going with that side of development, and refining all of those new features that came in, the child units, everything, while another part of the development team wanted to go more into the overall combat systems and try and rework those and fine-tune them. And that really split up the entire development process and changed the game's scope overall into two different routes, being obviously Birthright and then Conquest. And then later on, Revelation was thought about, and they started to develop that. But once they got the idea of the route split, and they started to work on what each team wanted to really work on, they then hired a guy to write the overall story and create the outline for what could occur. He wrote it, I believe he wrote the part for Birthright. He finished it, and he gave it to the developers, and they decided it was good, and they wanted the other two routes, so he wrote the other two routes, but then they realized that the scope of the game was too big, and so they had to trim a bunch of stuff down, and then they added a few things to make the overall royal families a bit more even. One of the things that came out from that was the character of Hinoka, who originally wasn't in the game and only came into the game during the rewrite process. Oh, Navarre doesn't need healing. Whoops. So the actual story of how it was developed is very interesting, and in my opinion, in a few ways, the development of Fates is kind of more interesting than the actual story that Fates is trying to tell, because a lot of what it's trying to tell either got cut during development, is locked to separate DLC stories, or got lost in translation, because that's another thing entirely. A lot of English translations for Fire Emblem games have several mistakes. I'd say the two famous ones were Fates and Radiant Dawn, with Radiant Dawn losing its original story that was told in Japan, as they only actually translated the simplified version that was in the easy version of the game. And then for Fates, they brought in a translation team, and that translation team changed a bunch of stuff in post. So it could easily be that the Japanese version tells a bit of a different story, and in some ways it does, but in other ways it really doesn't. Overall though, I obviously don't know Japanese, so I am sticking with the English versions for basically every single Fire Emblem game, or the English fan translations, which I would honestly say are fairly good. They usually get the point across about what a story is trying to tell. Maybe some of the nuance in the character writing can be lost. You know, like, the fact is, I feel like Roy is kind of a bland character, but that could easily just be a side effect of being translated into English, and the original Japanese version had a lot more development for Roy as a character instead of what we really got, because there was never a true English version of that game released for the West. It is going to be really interesting, though, what they will do with a possible remake of... Oh. Well, rest in peace, whoever you are. Violent. Rest in peace. It will be really interesting to see what they decide to do with a game like that, because, you know, stuff like that has... FE6 and FE7 are obviously, take place on the same continent, with FE7 being a prequel game, taking place about 20 years before FE6, so are they really going to try and put those games together? Are they going to keep them apart? What exactly will they do with those games? Me personally, I feel like FE6 and FE7, they're similar, but they have several different mechanics, and the fact is that you really can't fit them into one game, so I would not be surprised at all if they decide to put them as two separate games. That debate really goes, though, to Path of Radiance and Radiant Dawn. I really feel like both of those games, they're more direct sequels than FE6 and FE7, considering they're only 3 years apart, and the main cast of characters is almost exactly the same between the two games, with only a few new characters from Radiant Dawn. So, will they try and put those games together, or will they keep them separate? I also honestly believe that they would keep them separate. Once again, just the same type of thing with FE6 and FE7. They're both very big games, so it would be very difficult to try and tell both of those stories in one game alone. But then, even more than that, there are so many systems, even more than FE6 and 7, that are just way too different that you really shouldn't put those games together. The overall base system of Radiant Dawn and Path of Radiance is different. There's bonus EXP systems that are different. Overall classes for units like what exactly would you do with that? You obviously can't try and put promoted level 10 units that are ready for the endgame of Path of Radiance into the beginning of Radiant Dawn. So do you just give a bit of bonus experience to the people who played Path of Radiance, or what exactly do you do for that? Do you just separate them like they did for Fire Emblem 3 when they made Book 1, which was just a remake of FE1, and then Book 2, which was the brand new story? There are a lot of different ways they could play this out, and I feel like the overall solution is really simple. It's just to sell the games separately, because their overall systems and mechanics are just too different, and it would be a Herculean task to try and put them onto one cartridge. I mean, maybe if the Switch 2 rumors are true, who knows, maybe that would be powerful enough to somehow support something like that. But even then, I don't feel like a development team would be strong enough to try and put two of those games together, because Radiant Dawn by itself is like 40 chapters long and has a cast of like 60 to 70 characters, and then you're trying to do that along with their original base models from Path of Radiance, because almost all of the characters who appear in Path of Radiance get a different look in Radiant Dawn and different art to go along with that. You can't... Oh, Chicken didn't need healed. Oops. You can't do that. Like, you can, but it's going to be very, very hard to do. I'd say the only Fire Emblem games that could really get remade and put together that are already separate entries are either 11 and 12, because they already did that with FE3, or 4 and 5, Genealogy of the Holy War and Thracia 776. The thing about those games, though, is on the positive side of putting them together, they take place around the same time. The second generation of Genealogy of the Holy War and the main story of Thracia 776 really take place with each other around the same time, which doing that could just help to develop the story. Once again, there's an overall problem though with the mechanics of those games. You know, just in general, the sprite work and the abilities of those games are very different. But then there's other stuff like the capturing system, the gold management system, the overall level scaling. How exactly would you try and do those in a game where you put them together? Oh. Rest in peace, whoever you are. Sedgar. I'm losing units left and right. That's not good. Oh well. You can't really do that. You can't really put them together, but if there are any Fire Emblem games that I feel like could be put together, it would be those. Would I want that? No, probably not. Like, I hate to be like, I would rather spend $60 on two separate games, even though their stories take place around the same time, but I would rather spend $60 on two games that take place around the same time, even though some of the characters appear in one and some characters appear in the other. Like, that's just... If you put them together, you have three options. You sacrifice what's in Genealogy of the Holy War, you sacrifice what's in Thracia 776, or you sacrifice both of them. Or I guess a fourth option would just to try and put both of the different mechanics of those games into the specific chapters that have to do with either genealogy or the specific chapters that go to Thracia. And even then, that sounds like a development nightmare, because then you have to keep track of all of that stuff. Heck, even from a player standpoint, then you would have to keep track of what units are what level at what time. That doesn't really work. You're gonna have to separate those games out, and I am completely fine with that. Once again, both of them are Fire Emblem games. They're long enough to be games on their own. They don't really need to be put together. So, I guess what I'm trying to say is, yes, I think those two games could be put together, but they shouldn't be put together. Uh, game like FE3 though, I am still surprised to this day that it got separated into FE11 and FE12. Like I said in the last stream, I understand why they really wanted to just go back to the roots of the original story of Fire Emblem, but considering that no one's portraits really change between the games, and a lot of the mechanics overall stay the same, there's a lot of maps that get reused, it feels like they could have easily, I guess not easily, it still takes a lot of time to obviously develop stuff, but if they just spent a bit more time finishing up the overall game, I feel like they could have put them in the same package instead of separating them out into two packages. Especially since they were released as FE11 and FE12, completely ignoring the Gaiden remake. And that game didn't get remade until, 2017 then? So, it's honestly a bit confusing to me why they decided to separate them out. And maybe that's just me saying that because now I don't get to experience it without having to use an English ROM for the game. Oh, Navarre doesn't have a sword. Well, that's a problem. Navarre, you need a sword. I have to say though, I do wish that I was able to stream a bit more today, but I actually had my first day of my summer job today, so that, huh, what? I really don't know how this game works, huh? I guess to drop this and drop the Rider's Bane, because I don't need that. Oh. Okay. Anyways, I started my summer job today, which is a lot of hard work. Personally, I think it's nice. It gives me some time to just stop and think, which I don't feel like I get a lot of the time. Usually I am playing a bunch of video games, which I love doing, but in a way it also makes it so I don't stop and think about just random things. And I don't know, I don't really like thinking that much, which might sound a bit weird to some people, but thinking to me just seems really boring. But for a job like that, for context, it's basically I work in a plant, so I make certain parts that get sold to other developers or other companies who then sell them as products. So the overall amount of work is pretty simple because they're just mindless 2 to 3 minute tasks that I repeat for 8 hours, and it can get monotonous at times, but the fact that I just get to do something with my hands allows me to just have that time to think and reflect, and that's very nice because instead of just sitting there doing nothing, I actually am putting my mind to something while at the same time just being able to think about like what I've done with my day or my thoughts on a specific topic. And in a way that helps me out a lot because it just helps me to focus up a lot more than I usually am most other days. At the same time though, obviously it limits my ability to do other stuff. I'd say the main two things that obviously gets rid of is time to just relax during the summer between school and being able to hang out with friends. I'm lucky enough though that a lot of my friends have jobs that are also usually in the morning, so I get afternoons off and I'm able to hang out with them a lot more. I also don't have to worry about obviously maintaining an overall schedule like a lot of other jobs have to do. I used to work at an ice cream shop, which was pretty okay overall, but the really big thing about it was I never really knew if I was going to be on a shift or not until about 2 weeks beforehand. Usually it was about a month, but there were some occasions where it just turned out to be about 2 weeks before. And for stuff like that, it became really awkward because if I was trying to make plans with someone, you never really knew if you would be scheduled for work or not. And something like this, I know, oh, I'm going to be working from this time to this time on these days every single week, so now it's a lot easier to schedule stuff out with people that I want to hang out with, which I do really like. Plus there's the fact that, obviously, I really like money. Money is pretty important to everyday life, and the fact is that me being able to make money will help a lot in the future with stuff. So I will take what I can get. Sheeta, don't die. Okay, awesome. The fact is that she's having a difficult time with getting a lot of strength, but she's getting some pretty good speed, which is always very nice. She's got a need strength later on, but listen, I'll take what I can get with her. I need a steel sword. And give me another one. Awesome. Actually, while I'm here, before I defeat the boss, I'm gonna go ahead and equip everyone with some more weapons, just because I'm not very good at going to armories in a lot of the Fire Emblem games. Usually it turns out that I'll just run out of weapons. So games like Fates and Shadows of Valentia are very, very nice, in my opinion. Oh, and also Engage. Because those 3 games, I don't have to worry about weapon durability, and instead, oh, she got strength, yes, and speed, and defense. Go Sheeta. Now that's a little bit better. 8 defense is pretty good, I feel, for like a Pegasus Knight especially. Games like that, though, I don't have to worry as much about trying to buy other weapons because I never really need to worry about weapon durability. Even games like Three Houses, FE8, also probably like Radiant Dawn, I don't have to worry as much because I usually get access to the armories throughout the entire game, which is very, very nice to have. But then you have games like this, where obviously armories are a lot more scarce. You don't always get access to them, and it makes it a lot more difficult to try and use certain units because, for me at least, I might forget to give someone a certain weapon that they need to actually use and actually, ooh, crit, nice, actually succeed in combat. Like, obviously, we have Marth, who went ahead and had a whole 1 durability on the rapier before losing the use of that. Oh shit, I forgot about this dude. Orshay's still alive. Good for him. So, the fact is that I need to go to this armory, and I need to give these units a bunch of weapons before I forget. And also vulneraries. The fact is, well, we now have Wendell, who has the ability to use staves, which will definitely help out. But let's face it, 2 possible healers is still not that much overall, and I really, really need a lot more than that. So vulneraries are very, very nice to have. Speaking of healing in most FE games, I feel like it really depends. The utility of healers overall really just depends on the game. They're nice to have, especially in the early game, where a lot of units can easily die to a lot of stuff and becomes a lot more of a rock, paper, scissors, flip a coin type of situation with the RNG. Later on, their usefulness for me at least kind of dies out a little bit, just because they go from these pretty good units to have overall to okay units who really just need to have like something else going on with them. That usually involves them getting access to tomes, which is very, very nice to have. And definitely a plus overall. You don't sell vulneraries. Great. It does depend though. Certain staves are just insanely useful to have, and you should really keep them on you at all times. I'd say one of the biggest ones is probably Sheeta only uses swords. This isn't Sheeta, this is Wolf. I'm getting characters confused. I need to go to bed soon. There's certain staffs that are very, very useful though, in late and endgame. Stuff like heal and mend can be used from time to time, but I don't really find that much usefulness in them after early to mid game. But other stuff, like for example, fortify, warp, and barrier can be very, very useful. Fortify, I believe in most games, has the ability to heal everyone in a certain area, which basically that's insane healing to have. Even if it's just like an okay heal overall, like it has the same amount of healing potential as something like the actual ability heal. That's so very nice to have, especially giving it to multiple units. Of course, I believe it's more than that, but I don't really know for sure. And then there's stuff like Warp, which is just an amazing ability overall, completely skipping chapters, all that kind of stuff. But I mean, I don't know, for certain games, like, the usefulness of healers just isn't there. Like this one, the fact that they don't get experience from healing up units is terrible, and automatically makes them a lot worse units. Because now instead you have to try and hope for the best, and put them up against an enemy and hope that they don't die to them, which, no thanks. I'm not gonna try and test my luck with something like that. I'd rather just not use a healer. Heck, I'd rather just use Wendell because he's able to use magic, and magic is amazing. So why exactly would I use someone like Reese who can't get experience from the one thing that he really should be able to get experience from? I guess the big problem though is really just the fact there seems to be a lack of vulneraries so far, or at least someone has a lot of vulneraries, or whoever I gave the vulneraries to died, and whatever happened, it's not good. That's really, really not good. I honestly really hope that I didn't give all of my vulneraries to someone who died, because if I did, then that basically just is gonna cause a whole bunch of problems, because I already don't really understand a lot of the system that this game is trying to tell me about, and now you're trying to stack that on top of the fact that I don't exactly know. You have an armor slayer? Oh. I'm putting that in the convoy. Someone's taking that. Okay. Store. 10 gold. Like this. Why exactly does it cost money to store stuff inside the convoy? And even then, it's only 10 gold. Like, some of the systems of this game are so dumb, in my opinion. And I'm really happy that a lot of later Fire Emblem entries fixed the systems that were found in this game, because no one should have to worry about spending gold to try and access the convoy. And even if they do have to worry about that, why not try and get it at a higher price? And instead, you're just here you go. Spend 10 gold, now you can use the convoy. That doesn't matter. I have like 30,000 gold. It doesn't matter in the long run. And I know that complaining about it, it's like, why are you complaining about it, Grant? It really doesn't matter. You're talking about the fact that it doesn't matter. I'm just saying, it's kind of stupid. Like, oh, what was that? What? No. Huh? Huh? Wait. Oh, we're fine. I thought Sheeta was about to die all of a sudden, and if she was, I was gonna freak out, because if there was one character that I really don't want to die, it's Sheeta. So, let's see here. How much HP? 6 out of 16. I'm actually gonna do the math for this one real quick. So, 5 strength, with a lance. Don't know how much damage that does. 6 HP, 8 defense. I believe she'd be able to survive a hit, so I really want to try and get the kill for more experience. So I'm gonna go for it and hope for the best. I believe in Yoshida. Come on. Okay. Come on. Oh. Okay. Awesome. And now I just have to hope that reinforcements don't appear again and just kill her. Because she is really the only unit that I will stop my game and use the basically Divine Pulse. Was it the little like turn rewind feature for? She's like one of the only units I'll do it for. The amount of units that she's able to recruit, her usefulness in the game, like there's no way that I'm going to just leave her for dead. I can do that for any of these other units. Board and Court, I don't care about. I hate axe units. I don't hate them, but if I had to choose between like sword units, lance units, and axe units, it would probably have to be a fight between sword or lance units. Axe units, they're not very fun to use. The fact is, low accuracy isn't that fun of a thing to have to deal with. High strength, very, very nice. There's a lot of usefulness in that, but just low accuracy sucks. They do the thing that they basically did with Thieves, though, and gave them in later games very, very high crit chances, which makes them a lot more fun to use, but in the early game, they're just so bad. I honestly do think it's a bit funny, though, because there are certain games where they are very... Oh. Are you kidding me? What? Oh. Go Sheeta. Go Sheeta. You know, it's times like that that really make or break Fire Emblem for me, because if she died there, I would have been devastated, but she didn't, meaning that this is a great game and has some great design. But it really is stuff like that in Fire Emblem where it brings in a lot of the reasons why I love this game. Like, the fact is that there's some BS in there that you have to deal with, but the BS is fun to see. I like seeing stuff like that because then it creates these super crazy situations that you can get yourself into. Like, I really wasn't expecting a random ambush reinforcement to come from that, and even after seeing the first one, I didn't expect to see another one after that. So, even though that happened though, she then was able to dodge it. That's cool. I like that. I think that's one of the advantages that Fire Emblem has, especially over some other games, where they just get that random chance in there. and you get to see obviously the percentages overall of what the chances are that certain things can happen. And I think that's also really cool because, you know, you're not just hoping for the best with that. I really think of some other RPGs where, especially stuff like Pokemon, where Pokemon, you get to see like the accuracy of a move from 0 to 100, but 90 accuracy doesn't really mean that the move will hit 90% of the time. So seeing a game like Fire Emblem, which gives more specific percentage totals for the possible accuracy of each hit, is very nice to see, and I really like that. Even though in reality, it actually turns out that the system that Fire Emblem uses is actually a lie, which is an entire other thing. Like, there's so much small Fire Emblem trivia that I absolutely love to learn about. I feel like this is another one of the ones that's just very interesting to learn, which is that the overall RNG rolling in Fire Emblem does actually lie to the player about what the possible hit rates are. And it really wasn't until... Actually, I don't think any game really fully tells the whole story about what's going on. 9 movement, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, shoot. Jagan, go in this hole. Is this Harden? No, this is Kane. Kane will be fine. Go in this hole. Okay. Yeah, but there's like an entire backstory about the fact that Fire Emblem technically lies about its overall RNG values. But even then, like, you still get a general idea about what's going on, and usually the values don't fluctuate so much that you're really getting lied about what a possible hit could be. So I'm overall fine with the system that is at play, because it does lie to the player and make them feel like some hits have more of a chance than they might actually do. But if it works, it works. And I feel like this is... well, this dude's dead. This system kind of works. Merche doesn't have that much fun though, because he's dead now. Oh well, rest in peace. This chapter should be over real quick though. Considering that all that's left in the way is a knight, Wendell should make quick work of him, and then I should be able to just use Jagan to possibly finish him off. Maybe Kane if the situation gets too dire. Agma's also obviously there. How much? 13 defense is a lot though. But Wendell should get double lightning in there, 6 times 2, leaving him with 10 health. Jagan Silverlance, very strong, obviously. He should be able to get some damage in there. Accuracy is still something that you need to worry about, but it shouldn't be a huge deal. Jagan hits this, it should be good. Yeah, okay. We'll be fine. Oh, that was a lot. Okay, it'll be fine. Okay, this chapter should be over real quick. All that's left is for Wendell. Does this dude have... no, it's just a Silver Lance. If it was a Javelin, then Wendell would probably be in more trouble. But, since he only has one range with the Silver Lance, Wendell can make very quick work of this dude. Yep. Awesome. So now that this dude is defeated... oh, Silver Lance. That's very nice to have. Obviously, Jagan has a Silver Lance, and it's insanely powerful. I don't think anyone can use it other than him right now, but that's okay. Once people start getting promoted, then other characters can actually use it, and it'll be a lot better. So, let's see here. Hearn has double steel swords, so I'm gonna give Agma 2 steel swords, And then that should be good. And we'll end the chapter with Marth. Okay. Now we should be better with the convoy for most of these guys now. Archers, I won't have to worry about as much. But seize. There we go. Well met, Prince Marth. Princess Nita has taken refuge in a fortress, but you will see her soon. May enemies await you in the castle. You face many dangers. Do be careful. And there we go. Save the game. And no. So, obviously, as I said, I'm only doing one chapter because these take about an hour to go through, and I have work in the morning starting at about 7:50. So I need to be up and ready to go very, very early. So, yeah. Thank you everyone who tuned in to watch. If you weren't able to tune in and you're just watching the thought of this, then thank you as well for that. And have a good night.